Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMC, Diwan-e-Ghalib, Meri Zubaani. To all our returning viewers, we are very happy you could join us again. And to the new viewers, we are delighted you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, if you were with me in the previous episode, you know that currently we are going through Ghazal 25 from Diwan-e-Ghalib, Pae-Nazr-e-Karam, Tohfaa hai Sharm-e-Naa-Rasaai ka. We have already posted 5 episodes for the first 5 couplets. Today we are going to get into the 6th couplet. As always, I'm going to read the couplet first and then we will get into the keywords, concepts and the impression. So this is how it goes. Wahi ek baat hai jo yaan nafas waan Nikhat-e-Gul hai. Wahi ek baat hai jo yaan nafas waan Nikhat-e-Gul hai. चमन का जलवा बाइस है मेरी रंगin-nawaai का. So let's start with a quick approximate translation. First line, वही एक बात है जो यहाँ नफस वहाँ निकते-गुल है. It is the same thing that at this end is the reason for my breath. And at that end is the reason for the fragrance in the flower. Second line, Chaman ka jalwa bais hai meri rangin-nawaai ka. The spring splendor of the garden is the reason for my colorful poetry. Very approximate translation. So let's start picking up the keywords. First line, वही एक बात है जो यहाँ नफस वहाँ निखत-ए-गुल है. वही एक बात. So that one thing. Now baat can be a thing, baat can be a topic, baat can be a reason, but वही एक बात is that one particular thing. है जो यहाँ is here. Nafas. Now, nafas is a beautiful word. We have covered it at DGMZ a few times before. So, nafas translates to a breath, but it has other connotations to it. It can also mean soul. It can mean spirit. It can mean something very momentary, just like a breath, right? Something which is an instance, right? It can also mean at times the breath which is actually a sigh coming out of somebody's mouth. So that is nafas. इस पे शकील बदायूं का ये शेर, मेरे हम नफस मेरे हम नवा मुझे दोस्त बन के दगा ना दे. मैं हूँ दर्द इश्क से जा बलब मुझे जिंदगी की दुआ ना दे. जिंदगी की दुआ ना दे. So मेरे हम नफस, my companion who is so intimate as if you and I share the same breath, right? That kind of intimacy. Mere hum nawa, again, my intimate companion. Don't be a friend and betray me. And in the second line, he tells why he says that. Because he goes on to say, the pain, the grief of love, I am totally submerged in it. It has reached a peak where now it will prove fatal. So be a friend and stop praying for life for me. Be a friend and let me succumb to this pain, right? Stop praying that I should live on. साहिल लुधियानवी का ये शेर, मैं जानता हूँ मेरी हम नफस मगर यूं ही. मैं जानता हूँ मेरी हम नफस मगर यूं ही कभी कभी मेरे दिल में ख्याल आता है. And of course, a famous song from the movie Silsila, right? So the approximate translation is, again, my companion, my intimate companion who shares my breath, my very breath with me, right? That kind of intimacy. I know everything, but still at times there is this thought that comes into mind. ये होता तो क्या होता, right? Moving on to the next word, waan. So we covered ya, which is here. Waan is there. Ya, waan. Then nikhat, the second pivotal word in the first line. Now nikhat is basically, it translates to fragrance. It translates to smell, perfume of something. Sometimes it can also, by extension, translate to smell of the breath, right? अहमद फराज का ये शेर, सुबह दम छोड़ गया निखते गुल की सूरत, रात को गूंचाए दिल में सिमट आने वाला. In the morning, that one left me like the fragrance leaves the flower. That very one who previous night was embraced closely in my heart. जॉन इलिया का ये शेर, निखते पैरहन से उस गुल की, निखते पैरहन से उस गुल की, सिलसिला बेसबा रहा मेरा. Approximate translation is, again nikhat, right? With the fragrance of her robes, with the fragrance of the robes of that flower, and here the beloved is being addressed as the flower, I maintained a relationship even without any breeze, right? So her fragrance kept reaching me even without any breeze facilitating it in terms of reaching me. It was always reaching me. I always maintained that relationship. I always had that familiarity with her smell despite no breeze blowing at all. Another शेर from ईशा अल्लाह खां इंशा, ना छेड़ ए निखते बादे बहारी राह लग अपनी, तुझे अटखेलियां सूजी हैं हम बेजार बैठे हैं. So the approximate translation is, do not tease me, you zephyr, you breeze of summer. Mind your way and go your way. Do not come and tantalize me. Do not come and tease me, because here you are playing with me, teasing me, and I am in a state of extreme grief and distress. And then this last one, मीर हसन का शेर, हम ना निखत हैं ना गुल हैं जो महकते जावें, हम ना निखत हैं ना गुल हैं जो महकते जावें, आग की तरह जिधर जावें दहकते जावें. So the approximate translation is, I am not the fragrance that escapes the flower. I am not the flower either, that I would go around smelling good wherever I go. I am in fact fire, and hence I burn wherever I go. So a very sharp contrast between the lover and the beloved, right? So that takes care of nikhat. Moving on to gul. So gul translates to any kind of flower. Usually in Urdu poetry, it will be a rose, a red colored flower, but it can be any bloom, it can be any flower. Chaman. Chaman is garden. So sometimes chaman is also used to indicate a place which is very flourishing, right? Blossoming. But otherwise it is usually a garden. इस पे जानिसार अख्तर का ये शेर, जब शाख कोई हाथ लगाते ही चमन में, जब शाख कोई हाथ लगाते ही चमन में, शर्माए लचक जाए तो लगता है कि तुम हो. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, whenever in the garden, if I come across a bough, right, a stem of a tree, which as soon as I touch it, kind of reacts to my touch in such a way that it bends down, right? It curls up, or there's some movement in that tree. It just reminds me of you. Reminds me of you. Beautiful couplet. आलमा इकबाल का ये शेर, हजारों साल नरगिस अपनी बेनूरी पे रोती है, हजारों साल नरगिस अपनी बेनूरी पे रोती है, बड़ी मुश्किल से होता है चमन में दीदावार पैदा. one of our favorites, of course, from the famous movie Pakeezah. The approximate translation is 1,000 years the narcissus flower will mourn and lament its anonymity, its obscurity. And then, in 1,000 years, there will come this one person who will be able to search the flower, who will find the flower, who has come searching for the flower because they know the value of the flower, they know the rarity of the flower. So all those 1,000 years of wait, and then one such person comes around. So that takes care of Chaman. Moving on to the next word, Jalwaa, which translates to luster, splendor, display, show. इस पे दाग दहलवी का शेर, ये किसने जलवा हमारे सरे मज़ार किया, ये किसने जलवा हमारे सरे मज़ार किया कि दिल से शोर उठा हाय बेकरार किया. Approximate translation is, when they are doing that, I, lying inside the grave, I am getting very anxious. So by extension, it is the beloved who has, after all this while, come to the tombstone, right? And probably is lamenting the death of the lover. And the lover from inside the grave is saying, who is this? He knows jolly well who it is. Who is this who is showing their emotions at my grave? It is making me very anxious lying inside this coffin. Moving on to the next word, bais. So bais is a reason for something, a cause for something, sometimes an occasion for something, right? इस पे दाग दहलवी का शेर, उज़्र आने में भी है और बुलाते भी नहीं, उज़्र आने में भी है और बुलाते भी नहीं, बाइसे तरके मुलाकात बताते भी नहीं. Lovely couplet. So the approximate translation is, number one, she has an excuse in terms of coming to me. Number two, she never calls me. And hence, I am confused as to what is the cause, what is the reason for her renouncing, for her giving up on any possible way to meet. She's not coming, and then she's not calling me either. I am really confused. What is this reason for not meeting me? So that takes care of bias. Moving on to rangin. Rangin is colorful, rang is color, rangin is colorful. इस पे फैज़ अहमद फैज़ का शेर, दोस्तों उस चश्मो लब की कुछ कहो जिसके बगैर, दोस्तों उस चश्मो लब की कुछ कहो जिसके बगैर, गुलिस्तां की बात रंगी है ना मैं खाने का नाम. So the approximate translation is, friends, discuss with me those eyes, those lips, without which neither is the garden colorful, nor is this tavern where wine is served colorful. Nothing has its color without those two things. So let's talk about them. That takes care of rangi. Moving on to nawaai. Nawaai is sound, voice. इस पे साहिल दहलवी का ये शेर, ना फूल मुर्गे चमन अपनी खुश नवाई पर, ना फूल मुर्गे चमन अपनी खुश नवाई पर, जवाब है मेरे नाले तेरे तराने के. So the approximate translation is, you bird of the garden, probably referring to bulbul or the cuckoo bird, koyal, right? So birds of the garden or bulbul, do not be so haughty, do not be so boastful about your happiness-filled songs, right? Do not be so prideful of your happiness-filled songs. My laments are the apt response to these happiness-filled songs that you are rendering in the garden. My laments will beat them anytime. right? My laments can stand against them anytime. So that takes care of all the keywords. वही एक बात है जो यान नफस वान निखत-ए-गुल है, चमन का जलवा बाइस मेरी रंगीन-नवाई का. Now let's get into the impression. So first line, वही एक बात है जो यान नफस वान निखत-ए-गुल है. The first line is very interesting because we see Ghalib compared to very unique things. Number one, Nafas. Like we discussed in the keywords, Nafas is life, giving breath, a breath. And here, breath of the lover, actually. And then Nikhat is fragrance or perfume that is emanating from the flower. So he is comparing the breath of the lover with the fragrance of the flower. Interesting, right? I mean, without getting into the details, the two things, how Ghalib has brought them together is interesting. You would not find a lot of commonality on the surface. In his comparison, Ghalib highlights the reason, the attribute that makes these two things share common ground. And that commonality, that attribute is what brings these things into existence. The breath of the lover and the fragrance of the flower. Nafas, breath of the lover, nikhat, flower's fragrance. So Ghalib says, wahi ek baat, that one thing, that very one unique thing. Not just any one thing, that one and only thing is the reason for my breath and the flower's fragrance. In true Ghalib style, he has not specified what this thing is. What is this commonality? In the first line, that is the reason both for the lover's breath and the fragrance in the flower. So it necessitates that the reader has to put on their thinking cap and think what could possibly be the reason for breath in the lover and fragrance in the flower. What could be so important, right? So life-giving, so dear to the lover that he calls it his source of life itself. He calls it his breath. The reason for his breath. What could be so important? Now, we know, and this is where we have to get into this concept, that in Urdu poetry, the beloved is often addressed as the Messiah Nafas, Masiha Nafas, which translates to Messiah's breath, or someone that has Messiah's breath. And as we know, Messiah refers to Jesus Christ, and of many things he is famous for, this is one of those things where his breath could put life in a dead person. So, beloved by the lover, by the lover is compared to someone who has the breath of a Messiah, by extension someone who has the ability to revive the dead with her breath. आलमा इकबाल का ये शेर, तड़प बिजली से पाई, हूर से पाकीज़गी पाई, हरारत ली नफस हाय मसीहाए इब्ने मरियम से. The approximate translation is the anxiety, right? The anxiety she has inherited from lightning itself. Purity she has inherited from angels themselves. And this warmth that she has in her, this warmth that she has in her, she has inherited from Maryam's own son, Masiha. Because as you know, a breath that is full of life is warm. A breath that is not full of life becomes colder right? So beautiful couplet talking about the beloved, how she has inherited these attributes, and of course one of them is this life-giving breath. ईशा अल्लाह खां ईशा का ये शेर, रूहुल कुद्दूस कि तुझको कसम और मसीह की, मरियम के तुझको इफ़ाते दामन की कसम. So the approximate translation is, I put you under the swear by Angel Gabriel. I put you under a swear by Christ, the Messiah himself. And I implore you by the purity of the hem of that pure Maryam or Mary. So these are all things that the lover is saying to the beloved, that because of these things I implore you, वास्ता देता हूँ मैं तुम्हें इन चीज़ों का. जॉन इलिया का ये शेर, यारा वो जो है मेरा मसीहा जानो दिल, यारा वो जो है मेरा मसीहा जानो दिल, बेहद अजीज है मुझे अच्छा किए बगैर. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, friends, that one Messiah who is my life, who is my heart, is dear to me, very dear to me, even though he hasn't cured me. Because Messiah comes with a reputation, right? Messiah will put back life in you. Messiah will cure you. So when the beloved is compared to or is said to have attributes similar to the Messiah, she should be doing all this. But in this couplet, John Elia says she hasn't done it, but still is very dear to me, still considered as my Messiah by me. सैयद मोहम्मद मीर असर का ये शेर, तू मेरी जान गर नहीं आती, जिस्त होती नजर नहीं आती. So the approximate translation is, my life, if you decide not to come, then life doesn't seem to be happening for me. If you don't come, life is not going to happen for me. So all these couplets to emphasize the fact that if Ghalib is saying वही एक बात जो यान नफस, that one single particular thing, that one and only thing which at my end is breath itself, clearly it can only be the beloved, though beloved is not mentioned anywhere in true Ghalib style. So the most probable thing that can actually be attributed as the reason for the lover's breath itself is the beloved. Lover, frankly, doesn't give importance to anything other than the beloved. For something so big, of course, it will be the beloved, but even for small things, in a lover's world, everything is connected to the beloved. So it was not a very, very difficult thing to guess, right? But the fact that it is not mentioned in the couplet makes it a clue, makes it the unsaid in true Ghalib style. Moving on to the reason for the fragrance in the blooming rose. So, yaan nafas, waan Nikhat-e-Gul hai. So here we don't have to break our head. Ghalib has already told us the reason is the same. So if we have figured the reason for the lover's breath, well, it is the same reason for the fragrance in the flower. Therefore, again, it is the beloved that makes the beautiful fragrance, beautiful perfume exist in the blooming flowers, in the blooming roses. Yes, in the world of Urdu poetry, the beloved is not only the reason for the fragrance in the flower or in the garden. In fact, anything and everything that is beautiful, that is alive, that is illuminated in this universe actually depends on the beloved for their beauty, for their light, for their fragrance. That's how the lover sees the beloved. That the beloved is not as beautiful as the rose. The rose is beautiful because it is taking its beauty its color, its texture, its perfume from the beloved. Everything is stemming from the beloved and radiating out to all the beauty around. And flowers are no different. Flowers are no different. Without the beloved, the flowers would exist without fragrance. Spring would lose its step, its vivaciousness, its sensory experience. So this entire blooming spring phenomena that happens because of the beloved. And इस पे मिर्ज़ा गालिब का बहुत ही प्यारा शेर, गर नहीं निखते गुल को तेरे कूचे की हवस, गर नहीं निखते गुल को तेरे कूचे की हवस, क्यों है गर्दे राय जौला ए सबा हो जाना. So the approximate translation is, if this fragrance of the flower is not desirous of being at your doorstep, if the fragrance of the flower is not dying to be at your doorstep, then why is it allowing itself to be mixed with dust by the breeze? Why? So by extension, this fragrance of the flower is dying to be at your doorstep because it knows it has to visit your doorstep, it has to borrow your fragrance and then go on and, spread it around and take all the credit of being so nice and so fragrant, right? But it cannot do that unless it visits you. It has to visit you. It has to visit your doorstep. It has to borrow your fragrance, my beloved, before it starts doing its rounds and starts getting all the appreciation of being so nice to smell, right? So that's a beautiful couplet capturing that exact sentiment that the beloved is not as beautiful or as fragrant as the flower. The flower will become as beautiful and as fragrant as the beloved. सागर सिद्दीकी का ये शेर, हर एक फूल का रंग फीका सा रहता, हर एक फूल का रंग फीका सा रहता, नसीम बहारा में निखत ना होती. So the approximate translation is, every bloom, every flower would have a faded color, a faded countenance, and every zephyr, every breeze, every summer breeze would have no fragrance at all. So the flowers would not have color, breeze would not have its fragrance. By extension, if you were not there, it is because of you that the flowers have their beautiful colors and the zephyr, the summer breeze, has its fragrance. मखदूम मोहिद्दीन का ये शेर, निखते यार से आबाद है हर कुंजे कफस, मिल के आई है सबा उस गुले तर से पहले. Approximate translation is, with the fragrance of the beloved, every corner of my captivity is smelling. Kunje kafas. Every corner of my captivity, and this is metaphorical captivity, is smelling because the summer breeze, the zephyr, has first gone and met that beloved who is head to toe drenched in flowers. And the breeze went there, met her, borrowed her fragrance, and has now come to me. And hence it is just making every corner of my captivity smell so beautiful. And then this last one from Faiz Ahmad Faiz. गुलों में रंग भरे बादे नौ बहार चले, गुलों में रंग भरे बादे नौ बहार चले, चले भी आओ कि गुलशन का कारोबार चले. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is that so that the flowers get their colors, so that the flowers get their color, so that the zephyr, the summer breezes get their fragrance. Come, beloved, come, so that the business of summer continues, or summer stays in business, spring stays in business. If you don't come, the flowers will not get their colors, the breeze will not get its fragrance, and the business of spring will go will go kaput. So come beloved, so that spring stays in business. Now, spring and beloved, it's not just that Urdu poetry indulges in it with such fervor and enthusiasm, right? Even English poetry is very enthusiastic about this concept. There is a phenomena called March Madness, and it actually stands or metaphorically represents a period of intense passion, intense excitement, and even bordering on crazy, right, for the lovers. This season is such that it makes people fall in love. It makes people who are in love feel more intensely, more passionately for each other. So there is this March Madness phenomena in English poetry also. Now, Urdu poetry captures March Madness in its own style. दिलदार दहलवी का ये शेर, सरे गुलशन बहार आने के दिन हैं, यही तो इश्क फरमाने के दिन हैं. So the approximate translation is, the time has come when there will be spring in all gardens. The time has come when love will flourish. ताहिर आज़ीम का ये शेर, मौसम गुल बहार के दिन थे, जो तेरे मेरे प्यार के दिन थे. The approximate translation is, those were the days of spring and blossoms. Right? Those were the days of spring and blossoms. Those were the days when we were in love. And last one, हमीदुल्लाह अफसर का ये शेर, हर दिल में उमंग किस कदर है, सब पर ही बहार का असर है. Approximate translation, the wave of joy and exhilaration is present in every heart. The effect of spring and its madness is on everybody. Great effect, great impact. So clearly, the beloved and spring go hand in hand, not because the beloved is as pretty as the spring or things that bloom in spring. No, the spring is as pretty as the beloved. The spring borrows from the beloved for that little time frame when it exists, her color, her fragrance, her texture, her sensory extravaganza, if you may. So now with all that, the first line kind of starts getting cemented, right? So yes, the beloved plays the role of the life-giving Messiah. So she becomes Wahi ek baat jo yaan Nafas hai. And yes, the beloved also offers her color, her fragrance, her beauty to spring. So waan Nikhat-e-Gul hai. In this first line, Ghalib has teamed up with the blooming garden to claim that it is the same beloved who is giving the lover his breath of life and the blooms their fragrance. Beloved is making both Nafas and Nikhat to happen. उन्वान चिश्ती का ये शेर, नफस नफस में मचलती है मौजे निखत और नूर. नफस नफस में मचलती है मौजे निखत और नूर, कुछ इस तरह तेरे अरमान के फूल खिलते हैं. Approximate translation is, in each and every breath sings and dances this wave of fragrance and light. This is how the desires, the dreams, the aspirations for you dance in my heart, or the flowers of desires for you, dreams for you bloom in my heart. Again, comparing the beloved, the love, the desire, the spring, the garden, the flower, everything rolled in one. Nice couplet for that. अबरार आबिद का ये शेर, सांसों को दे के तोहफाए निखत गुजर गई. सांसों को दे के तोहफाए निखत गुजर गई, छू कर मुझे हवाए मोहब्बत गुजर गई. Approximate translation is it gave my breath the gift of fragrance and left. It touched me and the breeze of love then left. So love gave the lover and his breath this everlasting fragrance of being in love. Okay, now like I said in the beginning, Nafas and Nikhat, two very interesting words that Ghalib has chosen for the first line, and both of them have a very extraordinary quality to them. I could not find a single word for it, so we will use multiple words. So the quality that both Nafas and Nikhat have are akin to being elusive, right? Fragrance and breath, very elusive in their essence, fleeting at times, and yet very independent, autonomous, free, cannot be trapped, cannot be controlled. So it's not tangible, but yet it is omnipresent, right? You can feel it, but you cannot capture it, you cannot trap it, you cannot hold it. It has a mind of its own, it has an autonomy of its own. Once the fragrance leaves the flower, where it will go, nobody can control. Where the breeze will take it, nobody can control. That fragrance now has a mind of its own. It will carve its own path. Nobody can predict it, nobody can control it. Despite the fact that both Nafas and Nikhat cannot be seen, cannot be held in your hand, cannot be captured, they are still very critical, absolutely critical. The absence of these would render the vessel they were supposed to fill useless. So you can only imagine a body without a breath. If the lover doesn't have his nafas, it's a dead body. A flower without its fragrance. Well, then if a flower is without its fragrance, we will almost think or consider it as paper flowers, artificial flowers. Real flowers are real because of that fragrance they have, that elusive, fleeting fragrance, which you know is there, you will sense it for some time, but then you cannot capture it. It will just pass you by and go on its way. So it is the nafas, it is the nikhat, that is the spark of life, the spark of existence itself in the lover or in the flower. And that is the power of the beloved. Ghalib has equated beloved as the reason for the existence of nafas in him and nikhat in the flower. That is the type of power the beloved has. She is the reason that makes the lover come alive, makes the flowers bloom and spread their fragrance all around. She is the one who has been given the power to create what cannot be seen, cannot be captured, cannot be dictated, yet it is critical for existence. अबरार कीरतपुरी का ये शेर, महका रहा मैं निखते जाना में हर नफस, महका रहा मैं निखते जाना में हर नफस, क्योंकि ख्याल जुल्फ से गाफिल नहीं रहा. The approximate translation is, I was always smelling with the fragrance of my beloved, my sweet smelling beloved. Every breath of mine was always smelling of my sweet smelling beloved, because never, even for a moment was I separate from her, from the thought of her fragrant tresses, hair. So that kept my breath, every breath, fragrant, similar to her fragrance. And मुबारक मुंगेरी का ये शेर, शमीमे गुल की तरह निकते हिना की तरह गुजर रहे हैं ख्यालों में वो सबा की तरह. So the approximate translation is, just like the fragrance of the flower, just like the fragrance of henna on the hand. They are traversing through my thoughts just like the east wind, just like the summer breeze, just like the zephyr. So that takes care of the first line. Very elaborate stage set up by Ghalib. In the first line, we barely scratched the surface. Movies, poetry, art filled with this concept of the dynamic playing between the lover, spring, and the beloved. Let's move on to the second line. चमन का जलवा बाइस है मेरी रंगी-नवाई का. Now Ghalib in the second line once again draws a parallelism between the lover / poet and the spring splendor in the garden. Ghalib says that spring has motivated the poet in him or in the lover by extension to create poetry in colors like never before. Rangi-Nawaai. Ghalib's verses have taken a unique color of complexity, intricacy, intensity, and beauty thanks to the splendor of the spring. गुलाम रबानी तबान का ये शेर. बहार आई गुल अफशानियों के दिन आए, उठाओ साज गज़ल खवानियों के दिन आए. So the approximate translation is that spring is here. It is time for flowers to blossom. Spring is here. It is time for the ghazals, for the poetries to be written, to be recited, to be glorified, right? So spring, with the advent of spring, the business of poetry, if you may, not business, that is a very tacky word for this. The art of poetry flourishes because summer just sparks something inside the lover. The summer just sparks something inside the poet, which is inside every lover, right? And poetry flows. The fact of the matter is that everything beautiful about the spring, its colors, its smells, its textures, everything reminds Ghalib, or the lover for that matter, of the beloved. This is unique to the lover's nature, very unique, where in everything beautiful, the lover sees a reflection of his beloved's beauty. For a lover who is in separation with his beloved, spring brings memories of her, but mingled with the acute realization that she is not with him. Spring for such a lover is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because spring surrounds the lover with beauty of the beloved. That's what the lover sees all around him during spring, his beautiful beloved. It's a curse because when the lover sees the beloved all around in the beauty of the spring, he becomes aware of her absence very acutely. Spring is but a reflection, a slight fragment of her beauty, but spring is enough to propel the lover into this intense feeling of missing the beloved, the intense realization of her surreal beauty. Anything and everything around him reminds him of her. And इसपे ये बेखुद दहलवी की गज़ल बेस्ट है. It captures it very well. It's a famous ghazal, आपने शायद सुनी भी होगी. So I'm just going to read it. So this is how it goes. ना कह साकी बहार आने के दिन है, ना कह साकी बहार आने के दिन है, जिगर के दाग छिल जाने के दिन है. This couplet I will translate, but in interest of time I won't be able to translate the whole ghazal. So this one means that Saki, do not say that spring is here, right? Do not say that spring is here. What is here is the season of the wounds of the heart getting um, clawed up again, getting fresh again, getting raw again. Because, like we were discussing, right, spring with all its beauty will come, but then amidst all that beauty, it will force the lover into this space of intense missing for the beloved. Everything will remind him of her. And then just finishing the ghazal, Ada seekho, ada aane ke din hai. Ada seekho, ada aane ke din hai. Abhi to dur sharmane ke din hai. गरेबा ढूंढते हैं हाथ मेरे, गरेबा ढूंढते हैं हाथ मेरे, चमन में फूल खिल जाने के दिन है. तुम्हें राज़े मोहब्बत क्या बताएं, तुम्हें राज़े मोहब्बत क्या बताएं, तुम्हारे खेलने खाने के दिन है. घटाएं ऊंधी ऊंधी कह रही हैं, घटाएं ऊंधी ऊंधी कह रही हैं, मैं अंगूर खिंचवाने के दिन है. Beautiful ghazal, capturing that essence, right? That yes, spring is here, this is happening and that is happening, but me, the lover in unrequited love, the lover in separation from the beloved, for me, spring has a different meaning. It is not the joyful, exhilarating, exuberant experience that everybody else is happening. For me, it is painful. For me, it is painful. For the lover, the beauty of the spring is not going to be easy to bear. March madness for a lover, come poet, in separation from the beloved, will make him pour out his heart via poetry. Poetry that will be focused on two things. Number one, beauty of the beloved and how spring is a reflection of it. And number two, pain and grief of the poet come lover since the beloved is not with him. मीर तकी मीर का शेर, कुछ करो फिक्र मुझ दीवाने की, कुछ करो फिक्र मुझ दीवाने की, धूम है फिर बहार आने की. Approximate translation is, have mercy, have some what is that word? Concern. Have some concern for this lovesick lover of yours, because the news is hot that spring is around the corner. So don't desert me, don't leave me in spring all by myself. It's gonna be painful. And then Sagar Siddiqui का ये शेर, तुम गए रौनके बहार गई, तुम गए रौनके बहार गई, तुम ना जाओ बहार के दिन है. So the approximate translation is, if you were to go, the entire splendor of spring will go with you. Hence I request you, it is springtime, please stay back. So that completes the impression of the second line. चमन का जलवा बाइस है मेरी रंगी-नवाई का. Now let's take a step back and look at the couplet in totality, right? So on the surface, when you read the couplet the first time, you will not be wrong to feel that there are two players in this couplet, two participants. Number one, the lover, who is a poet, and number two, the garden, that is in full bloom because it is spring. At least we also felt that way when we started with the impression, two major players. And yes, one can easily translate and interpret the couplet basis these two major players, assuming both first and second line are because of spring, are connected to spring, are anchored in the spring time. For us at DGMZ, the first clue that was not allowing us to assume just two players was ek baat. That one thing, that one and only thing, that unique thing. Ghalib says that one thing which is the reason for the breath of the lover. Breath of the lover. Knowing Ghalib, knowing the lover in Urdu poetry, no one, no thing can fit the bill except that one and only. the beloved. So वहाँ से पता चला, yes, it is not only about the lover, poet and spring, beloved. It is the beloved. Hence, in our impression, we did not make the assumption that Nafas and Nikhat were because of spring. We did not assume that the lover's breath is because of the spring around him, the flower's fragrance is because of the spring around them. No. We believe Ghalib attributes both Nafas and Nikhat to the beloved. She is that ek baat, that one and only thing. The second line, in our humble opinion, is probably with two players, the poet and spring, but then again the colorful poetry is not about either. It's not about the lover and the poet. It's not about spring. It is about the beloved. It is about the beloved as to how the spring season reminds the lover of the beauty of his beloved. The poetry will be about how spring makes the lover acutely miss being with the beloved. So that takes care of वही एक बात है जो यान नफस वान निखत-ए-गुल है, चमन का जलवा बाइस है मेरी रंगी-नवाई का. I hope you enjoyed the impression. Let us know via comments what you thought about it. As always, for the new viewers, a strong recommendation that please go through the episode titled Introduction to DGMZ, because that will give you a good insight into the motivation and inspiration behind the podcast. If you have time, visit the homepage of the channel. It has multiple playlists segregated by topics. Surf through them and pick episodes that interest you. Now I'm going to go ahead and close this episode. I'm sending a lot of love and light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.